Welcome back to day 88. Today's practice is a seated pose on the knees. So if that's not good for you, you can try another seated pose or maybe try a variation to get a little bit bend and opening of the knees. If you've had any knee replacements or significant knee surgeries or any pain currently, then you may not want to try this. This is just another pose not only to help open up the knees and strengthen the core, but it really is a nice seated position for posture when doing breath practices or meditation. So let's get started. I'm going to take my arms straight out in front of me. You can take your arms out to the side. Taking a nice inhale, draw the palms overhead, lengthen your spine, and exhale, lower. Let's do two more. Inhale, raise the head, lift the heart, exhale. One more time as you raise your arms overhead. Exhale, draw your palms together and down. Okay, so in Virasana pose, especially since you're on your knees, you want to use one blanket for padding. So I have various options here of props you can see. I've got a bolster, which you may not have, but you might have a firm bolster off your couch, something that you could use. It needs to be relatively firm, or at least something you can stack so that you can sit on nice and securely. So I'll show you the classic pose. You're sitting with your hips on your heels and your knees straight out in front of your hips. So you can see here where this allows you to sit up with your spine nice and tall with great posture. Also works to strengthen the core. And in this case, if you see my blanket, I'm letting my front of my ankles be right at the smooth edge of that blanket, so it allows for a little more opening. If I was to not use a blanket, it's a much bigger stretch for the top of the feet, so that might be too much. So consider having your toes off the end of the blanket and sitting on your heels. So next version, using a block in between your ankles. I go long ways, so I have more room for my hips to sit on. So it's between my ankles, and my feet are still hanging over this edge of the blanket. And you see that lifts your hips to give you a little more space for the knees. Another thing that can help with the knees and giving them space is to take your thumbs and roll your calves out, kind of away from the shin bone, so that it gives more space for the knees to fold. Now, noticing here if you're feeling any strain, or if you can't get your hips down, you're still this high, you might try another block. I can raise another block and sit up a bit higher. Now, you may not have two blocks available. You want something definitely firm and stable. So if you don't have that, you may find a nice firm pillow off your couch, maybe a few firm pillows off your bed, but again, you want them to be relatively stable. So the same idea here, shouldn't have moved my blanket. I've got my blanket, and then I bring the bolster or the pillows across my legs, and I still think about that little space I want to give my calves, and I sit back on my bolster. So you can see that that also gives me a nice lift. Another way to practice this, I can bring the bolster between my legs, and then that way too, if I need even just a little bit more space, I can get the block to sit a little bit higher. So you can work your way down, starting up maybe higher. Now you do eventually want to get to where your knees are together, but if we're working in this way, we're just going to work on getting space in our knees, little opening of the knees and the tops of the feet, and working our way down. All right, so find your practice, find your props, use what feels supportive. Really the alignment is thinking of keeping your knees as best as you can right in alignment with your hip bones. But if you have to work a little bit wider, that's okay too, to give you some space. Eventually we want to get our hips down on our heels as available without overdoing it. or straining or injuring your body. So do what feels right. It's just another way to sit for meditation or breath practice. If this is not for you, you can always use a chair or some other seated floor seating position. All right, thanks for joining this practice today. This will be preparing us to practice some breath practices starting tomorrow. Let's take our nice closing breath. Inhale, raising palms overhead. Exhale your palms together and down. Thank you for joining this one pose practice today. I look forward to seeing you back tomorrow.